57 that had departed from Newark Airport hours earlier. On board were himself, his co-pilot, the crew, and over 200 passengers, all with their life in Tadeusz's capable hands. An experienced pilot, he had successfully accomplished many flights and was comfortable making his way around the controls of such a large plane. The plane was forced to make an emergency landing at the end of its trip to Warsaw when the pilot realized that the landing gear wasn't functioning properly. Passengers were informed of the situation as it developed, allowing them to get in touch with their loved ones should the worst happen. Tadeusz himself turned to his co-pilot and wished him good luck, saying that he had enjoyed their time together. That's not a great sign, but it is a touching sentiment. As the plane descended and people on board made what they knew could be their final calls, the plane began to head toward the runway. Video footage shows it coming in, looking fairly controlled but still in danger. With no landing gear, any little bump or mistake could send the entire weight of that massive metal flying out of control along the ground. Inside the plane, some passengers took their own video footage using their phones, showing a plane full of people in emergency positions. One passenger mentioned that the landing was actually exceptionally smooth, even compared to other flights with working landing gears. That's when the pilot and crew ushered passengers off while fighting a fire that broken out, putting them. Slender Man is an urban legend featuring a tall, lanky figure wearing a suit. Another main component of the Slender Man getup is a blank white face. Said to prey on children, it's quite the horror story. These 5 Slendermen caught on camera and spotted in real life range from photoshopped fails to creepy pics that could be the real deal. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Playground sighting. People do love the Slender Man myth, and the internet is filled with awkward photos like this one. Photoshop features heavily in many of them, and we wouldn't be surprised if that was the case here. The scene seems like a standard one from the late 1900s. A group of children are playing during a beautiful day, with one stopping to pose as she climbs up a slide. It looks like the picture's all fun and games, until you look towards the shaded area underneath the trees. It seems the playground has an adult surrounded by a group of kids who seem to be sitting down looking at the adult figure. One is standing up looking a little unsteady directly in front of the woman, with none of the shaded kids interacting with one another. They're all staring at the figure, which, upon closer inspection, has an odd look. They seem to be tall and slender, which fits the bill for the Slender Man. You can't make out their face, but it does seem pretty featureless, adding to the terror. It's when you realize that the figure has no arms, but long, shadowy tentacles flowing from each arm that you realize what's going on here. Other than a poor Photoshop attempt, of course. It seems the editor wanted us to think that the Slender Man was indeed watching over these kids, true to the myth. If this was the case, it would be incredibly creepy. That entire playground would be done. Although it's interesting to note that the adult who we assume took the photo in the first place sees nothing amiss. Correct us if we're wrong, but we'd assumed that one glance to the left would be all that was needed to realize the kids were in trouble, but this parent seems unfazed. It could be that the picture was taken before they noticed the oddity, but we're willing to bet that the original pic featured nothing more than a really tall, lanky adult partially obscured by shadow. Add a little blur and maybe some blending techniques, and you've got yourself a Slender Man. This photo wasn't well done. Stretching the figure up a little was all that was needed to make a convincing Slender Man. We're sure that the original photo was probably creepy enough without the alterations to stir people's imaginations. Think about it. Some guy standing around a group of children all staring in his direction? That's serial killer type stuff right there. The awkward arms just killed it for us, as it doesn't take ghost arms to make a Slender Man. It just ruins the moment. Oh well. With not much that can be done about this fail, we're moving on to a photo that definitely isn't edited and may hold some dark secrets lurking in the background. Number 4. Playground gets weird. So it looks like Slender Man loves playgrounds. It makes sense, really. He preys on kids, and all creeps know that a playground's a good guess. Another shot with a group of kids hanging out on a slide in the foreground, but this one has other adults standing around watching things happen. Directly across from the group of adults is something that's seriously sinister. Standing under the covered area, next to a support beam, is an eerie sight. It looks like a very tall person wearing a suit complete with a tie is standing there watching the group. If you look down, it seems like he has no feet, but that's not too outlandish for a Slender Man photo. The other picture had crazy tentacle arms after all. It also looks like his face is missing, replaced with a Slender Man-esque white mask. That's the really weird part. That, and it looks like it's cold, and the guy, if he's really there, isn't wearing much to protect himself from the elements. A suit really isn't cut out for winter weather. If Slender Man happened to be real, this could very easily be a perfect sighting. The eerie, humanoid figure just staring whimsically at a group of children playing in a park. The adults here are standing guard, but you get the sense the Slender Man is just biding his time. The woods featuring in the background make a perfect backdrop for the scene, leading you to think that he snuck in through the trees and can easily slink back out again, completely unnoticed. Unnoticed until this picture was developed, of course. The fact that the kid on the slide has the same creepy white face as the guy does is just, Is he a Slender Man spy, adding more to the mystery? We figure the conditions were off. There's a little blur in the photo to begin with, and the shot might not have been developed properly. Only one face out of the 3 kids looking toward the camera has a clear face in the photo after all, and the guy in the background could have been affected too, especially because he's further away and partially obscured. We think he's probably just an odd arrangement of trees and shadow, but if we're wrong, this photograph is seriously dark. If those kids are targets, there's no way they're going to be able to resist the Slender Man, who does seem to be observing the entire group rather intently. Number 3. Guiding the Way. Picture number 3 is another photo that looks genuine, although it does leave a lot of questions unanswered. First of all, who's this kid in the front of the picture and why does he look so pissed off? This kid really doesn't like whatever outing these kids seem to be on. This photo was posted anonymously with no indication as to where it was taken, but it does look relatively old based on the style of dress. The lightly flared pants on the kid in the front with a tucked-in t-shirt and no belt to boot says it all. It's also unclear who took this photo. Could be that angry kid just doesn't like the photographer that much. In the background, however, is a figure that led the poster to believe that this pic was Slender Man worthy. In the middle of the shot, above the group of kids, is a strange figure that looks like a tall person following him. You can't make out any facial features other than a round mannequin-looking shape. The figure even looks like it's holding its right hand out in front of it as it follows the procession. One kid even seems aware of the ghostly apparition, looking over in that direction, although it's unclear if they're looking directly at the figure or just behind it. We can't figure out if it's a person who just wasn't all that photogenic or if it's something else entirely. It definitely looks ominous and very much like Slender Man shepherding a group of kids. These older photographs are notoriously tricky to get right, with many being thrown off by lighting, environmental conditions, or just a shoddy developing process. So many of these old photos seem to hold mysterious secrets, mostly because they're just not that good. Grainy photos let your imagination run rampant, with your brain processing things wrong based on a perceived sense that it's missing information and trying to compensate. That being said, this photo does have some sinister elements, and without being able to verify where it came from, we have to allow for the fact that this could actually be a real-life Slender Man sighting. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, after all. We know that line's been played out a lot lately, but it does ring true in so many situations, so it can't be too much of a stretch to apply here, can it? Once we have tangible evidence, we might recant, but for now, these Slender Man photos seem to be lacking anything concrete. Number 2. Hide and Seek. Taken in the forest by a group of kids messing around one day, this photo proves the Slender Man has made his way to Asia and set up shop there as well. While posing for a photo op, it seems that this girl was unaware of a spooky visitor playing hide and seek with her. She's on the right of the picture, with her peeping Tom peering out from behind a tree to the left. This is, on first glance, pretty creepy. The tall, lanky figure looks a lot like the Slender Man of myth, and the blurry features around the face seems to fit the bill. The wooded area itself looks quite peaceful, and we're sure it was just that on the day the picture was taken, with no mythical creatures to disrupt the mood. Another Photoshop fail. It looks like this editor didn't even try. The face is far too blurry, without any definition between it and the area behind, leading us to believe that whoever put this together is new to photo edits or just wanted to make a few friends laugh with a hastily thrown together redo. We do like how they got the legs and waist down pat, but that arm is obviously just a round paintbrush at work. The rounded stump of a wrist shows that no touch-ups were done past getting the general shape of an arm. We're also pretty sure that even a legendary creature, such as the Slender Man, once arrived, has to obey at least some of the rules of physics. Why, for example, would he hide behind a tree if he can disappear on command? We're referring, of course, to the fact that the tree is far too narrow to conceal him properly. That being the case, both shoulders would be showing on either side of the tree, unless he can turn invisible, which we don't think he can. As a Photoshop edit, it's a good first attempt, but we think more care should be put into trying to convince the world. Number 1. Creepy kids in logging camp. We don't know for sure, but this definitely looks like the area surrounding a logging camp. The photo was taken a long time ago, and we can't help but think it's creepy as sin. Those kids, no hint of a smile on their faces, seem to be possessed, staring into the distance past the camera. That 1,000-year stare isn't supposed to be something that kids do. Whatever they saw prior to this picture, it was definitely dark. The kids sitting off on their own even further back is even more terror-inducing, and we can't even begin to imagine what kind of horrors these kids must get up to in their spare time. The scene itself is dreary and bleak. As you pan left, you get the sense that there's not much hope to speak of in this landscape. Then, you see him. The Slender Man on the right side of the picture, standing just behind one of the last trees still standing among the destruction. He's just standing there, staring toward the photographer, seemingly taking in the entire scene. We don't know if he already got to these kids, but based on the looks of them, we think it's a solid bet. We're sure that nobody was actually standing there being super creepy when this photo was taken, but it looks really impressive. We can't say if this was another optical illusion or Photoshop, but if it was the latter, we've got to tip our hats to whoever pulled it off, because this isn't all that bad. If, however, these kids were visited by something mysterious and evil, we do have pretty good proof in this picture. This photo will, no matter what, probably make sleeping a pretty hard thing to do tonight. If only because those kids are so damn freaky looking. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Animals have some unique abilities that are foreign to us humans, but many videos have been popping up that feature teleporting animals, with people losing their minds over the implications. We don't believe in teleporting animals per se, but have included a few of our favorites for you to enjoy today. Some are ridiculous, and others seem somewhat legitimate, but all 5 of these animal teleportations caught on camera and spotted in real life are sure to catch your attention and put a smile on your face. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Mystery Dog. This video's making the rounds all over the internet and has amazed viewers worldwide. Many people are hailing this footage as proof of a real-life teleportation, with others calling foul, as always. We think it's got some merit, but are also, as always, hesitant to make any final ruling just yet. It shows a video taken at a drag race as 2 cars fly down the track and rocket past the cameraman. The pooch shows up after the 2 racing cars pass by in a complete blur, seeming to materialize behind the 2 vehicles directly in the middle of the track. The dog then sprints to safety on the near side and is greeted by a group of people who are happy that it didn't get crushed. After reviewing the tape, which does look legitimate, it seems like the dog was always there, but was just obscured by dust and smoke kicked up by the passing cars. We assumed that it was at the far side of the track and got scared when it heard all the commotion, opting to sprint toward what it assumed was safety, which is probably back towards its spectating owner. The dog really was lucky to get out unscathed, as it seems to dart across the road mere milliseconds after the car sped by. If it had begun its journey just a second earlier, things would have taken a seriously gruesome turn for the worst. Still, we're not gonna knock those who believe that this is a real-life teleportation, other than to say that those people would have been a lot less excited and probably would have been terrified if they had actually witnessed an animal teleporting into the middle of a drag race. We know that we wouldn't want to get anywhere close to something like that, no matter how cool it would be. That, coupled with the fact that this story only broke after the footage was uploaded and not immediately after the incident, just goes to show what people can glean from grainy camera footage that's also out of focus. The speeding cars probably helped to warp the picture a bit too, with the cameras struggling to keep up, with its given frame rate not being sufficiently able to capture objects moving that fast. This and the dust kicked up in their wake all added up to a regular event looking miraculous, with someone running with the idea and others hopping on the bandwagon without considering the physics behind pulling off such a feat in reality. Number 4. Pine Marten seemingly transported through time. After traveling 35 years through time, a creature thought to be gone forever has made a spectacular reappearance, surprising all sorts of people, with the majority of the world giving up hope for ever finding a live specimen in Yorkshire, where the pine marten used to be prolific but was hunted to the brink of extinction. One group undertook a costly project dedicated to finding evidence that the pine marten lived on. It's worth mentioning that these critters did manage to survive in small numbers in relatively remote locations of the UK, but are supposedly beginning to make a resurgence and repopulate the rest of the island once again. The result of a 4-year study, the footage was captured by remote cameras placed by the Yorkshire Pine Marten Project, which sums up their purpose quite nicely, who have been trying to locate the elusive creature for quite some time now. We would have given up after 4 years of fruitless searching, but their efforts were finally rewarded, giving us the first glimpse of a pine marten in the area since back in 1982. A skull was found in 1993, but this is the first live specimen to be seen since the last sighting in 82, making the discovery quite a big one. Despite their success, we do have to wonder about the mental state of the people running the show at the Yorkshire Pine Marten Project. The group is non-profit and has dedicated their lives to proving the continued existence of a fairly insignificant animal as far as the overall ecosystem is concerned. Call us crazy, but we'd be much happier seeing researchers and scientists dedicating themselves to more lofty pursuits than simply proving they were right in assuming that pine martens were still living in Yorkshire. It all seems a little silly, but fans of the pine marten disagree with us, with people all over the UK, and especially Yorkshire, overjoyed about the discovery. They do live in Yorkshire, however, so we have to give them credit for the fact that there's probably not much to do in any given day for the most part, meaning any distraction from the dreary English weather is a welcome one. It's also a good thing that they set up remote cameras, because the thought of a cameraman crouching in the woods in a pine marten blind for the better part of 4 years sounds more like torture than a field assignment to us. Number 3. Disappearing Cat Act. This footage was taken by a residential CCTV camera and was uploaded by someone who claims not to have doctored the footage at all. While we want to immediately call foul, we'll bite and assume that this footage is real for a moment here. The guy who uploaded the video has stated that the cat isn't his, but he has seen it around on a number of occasions. He had always assumed that it was a stray, although it looks like it's been groomed pretty well to be a stray. We assume that it's probably a neighbor's cat that prowls the neighborhood from time to time when it's let outside. That aside, he says that he was stunned to see the cat show up on his video feed, walk around his door for a few seconds, and then mysteriously vanish into thin air right before his eyes. He ran outside and said he could find no sign of the cat, who he said just phased out of existence. Based on what we understand about the laws of quantum physics, which isn't much to be fair, individual atoms are able to exhibit some spooky behavior, but an entire cat worth of atoms would probably make such experiments much more difficult to pull off, with modern technology and understanding of the world around us not being sufficient to be able to pull a trick like that off. What we are able to do, however, is work miracles with a little editing software, which is probably exactly what we're seeing here. It's not even difficult editing magic, which makes us wonder why so many people seem to be buying into it. Even amateur editors can pull off better effects than what we just saw, and we miss the days when people put real effort into their hoaxes. Call us old-fashioned, but we miss that time and think our teleporting dog was a much better optical illusion than this disappearing cat. That being said, if this cat really did teleport through time or space, we want in and can't wait to sign up. Number 2. Teleporting Cat Trick. We couldn't help ourselves and had to include this video on today's countdown. It shows a magic trick that involves a cat disappearing as it passes underneath a pair of wooden frames. The video doesn't show how the trick is performed, but starts with the camera hovering over the frames, showing us that everything is as it should be. It then pulls back a little bit and drops lower to get a good view of the entirety of the frames, as well as a few extra feet on either side of them and above them. Underneath the frame is a wooden deck with intricate knots and markings in the wooden planks. The cat then pops up on the left side of the frames, confidently striding up to them and walking underneath without missing a beat. This is where the actual trick kicks in, because the cat disappears once it passed the leftmost edge of the first wooden frame, eventually ending up completely obscured from view. As it disappears completely, its head and front legs emerge from the rightmost corner of the second wooden frame as it continues to strut its stuff and walk off camera. It might be difficult to see how this trick was pulled off, but a little common sense will tell you that it's not that hard. If you look closely around the top and bottom edges of the two frames, you can see that it's a bit off from its background. What our magician did was print out a picture of what the deck looked like from the top and front, pasting those images onto a box and making it look like the entire box was just two wooden frames. It's a pretty impressive trick when viewed from the proper angle, but would be easy to notice if you happen to be in the same room and were able to simply move around. The trick is all about maintaining the right angles, but unfortunately it doesn't involve any actual teleportation or magical cats that are able to make themselves invisible or teleport themselves through space. Number 1. Cat stops time and teleports. You may have seen this video that shows a cat that's able to freeze itself in time and teleport through space, all without affecting the object or space around itself. It's a pretty good video that's all about cats doing cat stuff. We're sure you've seen clips of cats trying to sneak up without being noticed, using all of their wild instincts to catch their owners unawares. This is one of the funniest things a cat can do, and is actually one of the few that doesn't seem to be malicious in any way, with most of their antics involving pushing breakables off countertops or tearing up clothing with their claws. This video starts with someone filming their cat going about its day. It notices them and goes into prowl mode, suddenly intently interested on the camera. It starts by moving slowly until its prey suddenly disappears behind the wall, hiding itself from view. After a few seconds, the camera peeks back out at the cat, now in full stealth mode, who isn't taking any chances of getting caught. Every time the camera dips behind the wall and peeks out again, the cat's moved another few inches to a few feet, freezing stock every time it sees the camera. We couldn't help but be impressed at how well this cat acts like a statue, with barely any movement on its part. If not for a few very slight movements, we could even convince ourselves that the cat isn't really there and is only a series of stills pasted onto a video. We know that's not the case, which makes this video even better. While some cats can be absolute menaces, tearing apart everything that you love and hold dear, cats like this one restore our faith in the species and prove once again that some cats can be awesome without even trying. The ending of this video is even better, with the cat finally making its way right up to the camera and simply staring, not sure of what to do next. A quick jab of the camera towards the cat then sends it flying back to its original position in fear, seemingly to start the process all over again. Now that's what we call a solid waste of an afternoon and one hell of a good time. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Zombies have featured in pop culture for quite a while now. You may not have realized that these flesh-eating monsters actually have a lot of basis in reality. We're taking you to the most bizarre reaches of the animal kingdom to present you with 5 zombies caught on camera and spotted in real life. The following parasites infect their host's brains, causing a boatload of delirious and creepy side effects. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Hymenopepimysis argyraphiga versus spiders. This is one nasty wasp and reproduces by using a form of zombification. It's found in Costa Rica, which might lead travelers to avoid the ecotourism destination, although we can all rest easy knowing that it doesn't actually target or affect humans. In this case, its victim is a particular species of spider. This spider host is incredibly important to the wasp because it's used as a kind of forced labor in order to build a nest for the wasp's cocoon. The process begins when a wasp finds a suitable spider to prey on, and its science fiction-esque path continues from there. The wasp's next step is to sting the spider in order to paralyze it for a small amount of time. During this window, the wasp lays an egg on the abdomen of the host spider, which is secured in place. Once this egg hatches, it produces a larva that then begins to feast on the spider's blood as it goes about its day-to-day routine. After a few weeks of feeding off the spider, the larva then needs a suitable spot to build its cocoon. This is achieved by injecting a special chemical into the host spider, which then causes it to build a very particular web. This new variety of web is much stronger and can therefore properly support the wasp larva cocoon even during periods of intense wind and rain. The chemicals basically take over the brain of the spider at this point, and once it builds the web nest, it then moves to the very center and proceeds to stop moving altogether. The next step in this process involves the spider devouring the spider's insides after injecting it with a poison. Once the spider is sufficiently consumed in this way, the wasp larva then constructs its cocoon, hanging it from the center of the newly built spider web. Once the larva has developed a little further, it emerges as a fresh wasp, ready to descend on yet another unsuspecting spider. What's really astonishing about this entire process is how the larvae are able to completely take control of these spiders' actions with the injection of a simple chemical. Their altered state is creepy to be sure, and is incredibly similar to what zombies are supposed to go through. This natural zombification is astounding and could offer incredible insights into the workings of the brain and how it affects behavior. There are also a number of other wasps that manipulate their hosts to do their bidding, each specializing on a particular species. Not much is known about how these wasps evolved to include such an advanced trick in their arsenal, but more research is constantly being conducted. Number 4. Jewel wasp versus cockroaches. Number 4 on our countdown is another wasp, also known as the emerald cockroach wasp. This one is worthy of note because of the way it infects not spiders, but cockroaches, hence its name. It is brightly colored, and like Hymenopepimyces argyrafica, lives a solitary existence, far from the normal behavior we expect most wasps to engage in. The jewel wasp is found in abundance in South Africa, Asia, and many islands in the South Pacific, especially during warmer seasons. It's interesting to note that they were also introduced to Hawaii in 1941 to control the roach population there, but the parasitic wasp wasn't able to combat them on such a large scale. When a wasp finds a cockroach to use as a host, it injects a venom into very specific and precise areas of the roach's brain. The first sting is injected into a thoracic ganglion to paralyze its victim in its front legs. This is followed up by a second, more potent sting that is located in the cockroach's brain. The second sting slows down the roach's reaction times to perceived dangers and also causes it to groom itself repeatedly. This is potentially due to the fact that the venom blocks a specific neurotransmitter, although further study is needed to confirm the hypothesis and deduce exactly how it causes such behavior. Another behavior that's been observed is that the wasp then chews off a large portion of the roach's antenna, which is believed to either help the wasp regain energy or ensure that it injected the correct amount of venom into its host. One of these severed antennae are then used to direct the roach, much like a leash, to the wasp's burrow. Once inside, the wasp lays an egg on the roach's abdomen. The infected roach then just sits there without concern for any apparent danger. After remaining in the burrow for another few days, the wasp larva then hatches and begins to use the roach as breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The larvae even seem able to pick and choose which organs they consume in order to keep the roach alive as long as possible. Once thoroughly torn apart from the inside out, the roach's body then serves as a protective spot for the larva to grow a cocoon. Once it's fully grown, the wasp emerges from the cockroach's body to begin their lives that span for several months. Female jewel wasps are able to infect multiple roaches after mating, which only takes a few minutes at the most, though the male wasp will then claim that this has never happened to him and usually he can last much longer. The ability of these wasps to alter the behavior of these roaches makes them spreaders of yet another wasp-borne zombification process. Number 3. Ophiocordyceps unilateralis versus ants. Our third item moves away from parasitic wasps that use other creatures for manual labor, food, and incubation chambers, and focus more on a deadly parasitic fungus that similarly infects its victims' brains and forces them to perform actions that are completely out of character in order to serve the host's purposes. This zombie-creating predator is actually a variety of fungus that was first discovered by a British naturalist by the name of Alfred Wallace back in 1859. Much like the wasps we spoke about earlier, these cordyceps fungi each focus on a specific species, with this particular entomopathogen preying on ants of the Campanati tribe, which includes carpenter ants along with several others. This fungus begins by releasing spores that attach to any ants unfortunate enough to cross their paths. This mechanism allows the cordyceps fungi to stop any one species from gaining too much control over their ecosystem, as the greater their numbers, the greater their chances of infection. The spores then begin to spread throughout the ant's body and begin to release compounds that directly affect the victim's behavior. Because of these chemical changes, ants that usually spend their time way up in tree canopies begin to make their way closer to the forest floor, where the environment is better suited to fungal growth. The fungi also causes intermittent seizures in the ants, which shake them loose from their higher perches and drops them toward the ground. From there, the ant climbs up the stem of a plant and affixes itself to the underside of a leaf. It's worth mentioning here that markings just like the ones these ants make when under their fungi invaders' control exactly match those found on a preserved leaf fossil dating back 48 million years old. This suggests that these fungi have been around for a very long time. Once locked onto its leaf, the ant slowly atrophies and wastes away, leaving a perfect meal for the fungus. Once it reproduces, it releases another cloud of spores that float on the breeze, waiting to infect new ants in the same way. Unlike parasitic wasps, this process is unseen and is a perfect example of a zombie virus in nature. The fungus also seems to be able to protect the infected ants from further microbial or fungal growths once they're possessed, which also serves to protect the fungus itself and maintain its life cycle. This might help with the fact that Ophiocordyceps unilateralis itself is susceptible to another hyperparasite that reduces its effectiveness and inhibits the release of spores. Number 2. Hairworm tactics. These parasitic worms are able to survive in extreme conditions. They need the correct environment to complete each step of a fairly elaborate life cycle, and this is a huge benefit. Hairworms are aquatic in their adult form, but many of their species require insects that are land-based to develop their eggs. For this to happen, adults must mate in water and then give birth to free-floating eggs. These eggs hatch to reveal a larva that must then burrow itself into a host in order to begin its next developmental stage. Once hatched, these larvae will bury themselves in anything from a snail to a mosquito in the hope that this creature is then eaten by their next host. Crickets are their regular victims, but they've been found in many other insects as well, including beetles. These larvae then develop into long, thin worms that completely take over their host. They're usually many times their host's length, and this is the stage where they start manipulating the behavior of their hosts by altering their brain chemistry. Since the hairworm needs an aquatic environment to mate and reproduce in, it forces the insect it inhabits to search out a wet environment. If the worms simply broke out wherever the crickets happen to be, they could very easily dry out, which would mean the end of them. This process is not understood all that well, and scientists are still trying to figure out how they perform their manipulation. Luckily for them, the hairworm is able to survive freezing temperatures, which allows researchers to keep them on deck almost indefinitely. If they weren't quite so hardy, they would be much more difficult to study because they would be more difficult to breed in laboratory settings. This also means that they're able to remain dormant in their hosts for the same extended periods and continue to infect them after, say, a winter's hibernation, which makes them much stranger and more terrifying. Thankfully for us, this specific species of parasitic worms don't infect humans, so we won't have to worry about being driven to drown ourselves by a zombie virus just yet. Number 1. Euhyplorchus californiensis versus shorebirds, horn snails, and killifish. Our next parasite that modifies the behavior of its host in order to increase chances of survival and procreation is the parasite Euhyplorchus californiensis, which, much like hairworms, have a fairly complicated time making their way from one host vessel to the next. They begin their lives with the parasite's eggs being released in bird droppings. The hope for the parasites here is that the birds will defecate over the water, which puts the eggs in the path of aquatic horn snails. These snails serve as a perfect place for these parasites to grow up, and they also make the snails sterile, ensuring that their new home won't be disrupted by the snail's own reproductive tendencies. Once they've matured for a few generations and built themselves up into a tiny army, these parasites then swim out en masse and right into the gills of killifish, where they latch on and make their way up a special nerve toward the fish's brain. The parasite then forms a coating over the fish's brain that induces symptoms very much like seizures. They're also more prone to swimming closer to the surface. These jerky motions close to the surface make it easier for birds to eat these fish, where the parasite lays its eggs in the bird's stool, repeating the cycle. The ability for this parasite to take over the brains of infected fish, while simultaneously surviving through so many complicated steps involving multiple hosts, makes them a force to be reckoned with where zombie-esque manipulations of other creatures' brains is concerned. Freaky stuff, right? Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. The world is filled with giants of the animal kingdom, with recent footage showing some real monsters. These 5 giants caught on camera and spotted in real life are bound to amaze you, and we can't wait to get started. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Snake Hoax. People went a little crazy when the internet produced a photo of this ridiculously oversized snake. Touted as the world's biggest snake, the picture was supposedly taken in the Amazon River in Africa. That's your first sign that something's a little amiss. The story goes that a crack team of Africa's Royal British Commandos hunted the snake for weeks, with the elusive creature managing to avoid them for the majority of that time. The picture came with reports that the snake was a danger to everyone in the surrounding area, having killed a whopping 257 people. On top of that, the snake was supposed to have been credited with taking out 2,325 animals, which is a pretty steep number. The team that captured it said it was 134 feet long and weighed 2,067 kilograms. That's one hell of a snake. At least, it would be if this story had any ounce of fact to it. The reality is that this was one of the internet's many hoaxes. It's one that definitely took off, inspiring fear in huge numbers of people who believed the story. If there was a snake of that size lurking around in this day and age, you can be sure that we probably wouldn't find